What's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today we're talking about the sequel to the famous film about witches. It's The Craft Legacy. Normally I go back and I watch the original film in preparation to see the new one. I had planned and scheduled to do just that this time as well, but I had to move a few things around this month and unfortunately, I couldn't revisit the original. I believe I just saw it last year though, so I'm not completely blind to this universe of films, but I never reviewed it for whatever reason. Maybe I'll review that hallowed film next year. For now, it's time to discover its legacy. Let's get cracking. This review is brought to you by the word of the day, hallowed, sacred, or revered. The Craft Legacy focuses on 3 young women who just so happen to be witches, but they need a 4th to complete their coven. That's when the new girl Lily comes to town, who just so happens to be incredibly gifted in the occult. This now completed coven of witches find out how powerful they are, and it's all fun and games until, as they say, somebody gets hurt. I've seen the first movie maybe once, so it's nothing that I feel is nostalgic for me, but I can appreciate the little nuances that it had that helped it find its overall atmosphere, which was undoubtedly darker and themed much more towards horror than this movie was. Truthfully, the first thing that comes to my mind when I watch this movie is that it feels like it should belong on the Freeform channel, both in its much lighter atmosphere, its clearly younger cast, and in its heavy-handed messages on political correctness, especially when it comes down to non-binary constructs like gender neutrality and sexual preferences in particular. It's trying desperately to appeal to a very specific audience, one that I don't think cares that much about horror sequels like this. I don't mind political correct messages in certain projects. I think it works out really well, but in this case, I think it definitely watered down the effectiveness of the original movie, and I imagine those who are big fans of the original film will have a hard time enjoying the sequel. It's also really hard to downright call it a sequel. I remember seeing articles left and right saying that this movie's not a remake, guys. It's not. It's a sequel, gosh darn it. Well, I'm just gonna say that anything that makes it a sequel is a gimmick, and a majority of the film, you can't even help but ask yourself how it's supposed to be a sequel when it's clearly following the same exact plot of the first movie, just as a remake would do. By the time you realize what it is that makes it a sequel, you're just annoyed at that point. Read my lips. This is not a sequel. Not really. If you want to call it a sequel, fine, you might as well throw in money grabbing before you say that though. Now, I don't want to close out the review without saying what I think is good. I don't know. I think these girls had some pretty decent chemistry together, since this seemed to be more of a coming-of-age thing than anything else. They worked out pretty well with each other, and this one character, Timmy, was particularly of interest because he started out as a bully, and through which manipulation he went through a change and became a really interesting character. I did really like that, and some of the various magic tricks that the girls do are a lot more powerful and in your face than the first film. Some will like that, some won't, but regardless, I do think that it's fun in that department. That being said, that's really the only positives that I can outright find, because a majority of everything else in this movie feels safe. Or as I used to say in my reviews way back when, cinematically monotonous, neither here nor there. Even if the first movie never came out and this was the only version of The Craft that we ever had, it still would be imperfect because it wouldn't really feel that original or special. There's a significant lack of soul in this movie that I found to be kind of distracting. Maybe that's just me though. Let's go ahead and look at my final score for a second. From an unbiased technical level, this film was incredibly safe. Not much stood out as particularly well crafted or anything. It just mostly feels kind of bland. That score is 58%, and as far as my personal bias score goes, that is much lower at 44% because I personally cannot find many things that I personally enjoyed about the movie. Averaging out the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 51%, 51 out of 100 possible stars, or an F letter grade. I can't say that I was really expecting a ton out of this movie. But I wasn't really expecting anything super light or PC like what you have in this movie. But it is what it is. Guys, let me know your thoughts on The Craft Legacy in the comments section down below. Were you a fan of the original? And if so, how well do you think this connects to that? As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like button if you enjoy this review, because there's always more like it coming out each and every single day. Hit the subscribe button and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out!
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1 critic that I go to when I need a movie pick. Thanks for joining up with us.